Hi again, Motor City Hamilton here with another Prodigy tuning video. I made a roll center video last week. I wanted to follow up this week with one that's a little bit more detailed. In my previous roll center video, I covered the basic functions of the roll center pivots for the Prodigy race cars and how roll center can have a big impact on car handling. It really determines how weight transfers around the car during cornering. So in general, a lower roll center allows more body roll in the corner. So it's going to let more weight fall over to the outside of the car, and it's going to push that weight down into the spring and then more weight down into that tire. So when you're off throttle coming into a corner, more body roll allows more weight to that outside tire, right? A higher roll center limits that body roll. It won't let the car lean over as much, and therefore it doesn't push the weight down into the spring. It actually pushes it into the chassis, so that momentum will actually go outside the side of the car and allow the car to rotate a little bit more, right? So a little bit more less grip on the rear end. So that's in general. That's the general description of what roll center does. But it's more complex than that, right? So in this video, I want to cover roll center in a more advanced way and explain the effects at different areas of the corner. So I'll also explain the testing that my good friend Tim Stamper and I did during the last race weekend, where we finished 1-2 in the event. We spent some time collaborating, thinking about the change we made, the effects we felt in the car. And what I want to do in this video is pass along the physics for why we think that what we felt and the changes we made, how they impacted the car and why, right? So look, the more we test, the more we learn, and we want to pass along those findings to the community so that you can test your ideas and make your Prodigy cars handle best for your driving style. So take these videos for what they're worth. There are many ways to go fast. These tuning videos are based upon what I've tested and learned so far. Your results may vary, so test, find what works for you. But hopefully this video helps you to understand some of the why behind what worked for us and what didn't, and why we think it worked, right? So let's first cover some terminology and really a refresher, because most of us are racing enthusiasts and we have a basic understanding of the sections of corner, right? But essentially, to get through a corner quickly, you have all these things to navigate. You have a braking zone, a turn-in entry point, a mid-corner, and you're going to grab throttle somewhere through this mid-corner. So mid-corner through the exit and then down the straightaway, right? So let's talk about braking for a second. We don't use much braking in 17.5 or lower pan cars. So lower powered classes, we don't really need that much. We've got enough grip. The cars can pretty much get us into the corner, other than drag brake. I think most of us run drag brake. My drag brakes are set, anywhere, set, 25% is usually my standard. Sometimes I'll go up, sometimes I'll go down, but my range is 20 to 30. So I'm basically 25% drag brake on the GTR, and 0% on the GT12. The GT12, I just want it to roll as much as it can. There's just so little power in those cars. I don't want to scrub any speed anywhere off of that, right? So I'm never on the brakes in the GT12. I'm trying to make the mechanical grip do the job, right? Sometimes in the GTR, I'll use sort of back trigger brakes, if that makes sense. Using the trigger to push it, the throttle trigger to push back. And usually one section on a track, maybe two, and it's usually at the end of a long straight. A long straight that has a 180 at the end of it, or a long straight with a sweeper with a 180 at the end of it. To navigate that, a lot of times I find that I need a little bit of brakes to get the car slowed down and turned in, right? And so the brake settings on my transmitter, they're usually somewhere between 70% and 85%, depending on the grip and how hard I want the car to slow down. The first practice run of the day, the first few practice runs of the day, I'll kind of double check this. I'm really just trying to get enough that the car will slow down, turn in, and go. But I want to scrub as little speed as I have to and make the car do the rest of the work. But it's important to note that braking is the first step through the corner. So think about the way RC cars go through corners. RC cars really, we're in and out of corners so much faster than full-scale cars are, right? Full-scale cars need to turn in and then set and then carry that speed around a corner for a much greater distance. We're pretty much in a corner and out in a tenth of a second, right? But the concepts are very, very much the same, right? The physics will carry over here, right? And to be fast, you really want to get the car to turn in and set and be back to throttle. I mean, this is true in full-scale racing, track days, or RC. The sooner you can get back to throttle and drive all that power, and whether it's a little bit of throttle here and then full throttle through, but the sooner you're back to power in a corner and gaining speed, the faster you're going to be off the corner and the faster you're going to be at the end of the next straightaway. So it's really important to get your cars to work well through the exit of a corner. It's more important than an entry. An entry, you may have to give up something to gain it, right? So let's talk about how roll center works through this, right? Roll center doesn't just have one job. It doesn't just do one thing. It does multiple things based on whether you're at the beginning of the corner and off the throttle, or if you're mid-corner and trying to get on the throttle. So I made this for a demonstration when I was talking about full-scale handling. So the contact patches here are different than what you're going to deal with in RC, right? So let's think about how weight transfers around. So in your street car, a static contact patch, your car's sitting in your garage floor on the level surface, right? You have pretty much the same size. You have about a softball size of tire touching the ground at any time. And that's all you have. You have 4 softballs that you are driving around in your street car, and it's really not a lot of surface area, right? But when you stand on the brakes, if you were to go to a track day and stand on the brakes, your weight is going to go forward and it's going to load those front tires. And I know I over-exaggerated it for this so you can see it in these pictures, but in a street car, they're going to go from softballs to soccer balls up front and baseballs in the back, right? So it's important to understand that weight determines how the car is going to go through the corner, right? So as you get on the brakes or drag brake or whatever it is, right, that gets you in the corner, even lifting, that some weight's going to transfer forward. And the harder you brake or the harder you turn the wheel, the more that's going to transfer here, right? Early in the corner, the weight starts to transfer to that outside front wheel and turns you down into the corner. Later into the entry of the corner, that weight starts to transfer more to the back outside wheel as well. And then mid-corner, you sort of end up transferring a little bit more even. And then when you pull throttle, that weight dumps right over to the back and that outside rear tire, right? So we have to think about this sort of effect and what we want the car to do, knowing that can we control these contact patches in any way to help us get through the corner more quickly? And like I said a minute ago, try to figure out how to get back on throttle as early as we can in the corner. So let's talk about what Tim and I tested and then try to apply it to what I just showed there for those contact patches, right? So I just want to, talk about what we experienced and then try to apply it back to what we think is happening from a weight transfer in the corner. So Tim TQ'd the week before and won the race the week before. So it's at Black Swamp. That's our normal track we run at. And he ran the kit pivots. So he the week before had a really good, same layout, had a really good comparison to start with because he was so fast the week before. So he had the 0.5 pivots in the roll center position. And he had the 0.25s in the flex pivots. So this is the second highest roll center in the kit, 0.5s, and the lowest anti-squat. So it doesn't limit that much. It lets the flex pivots let the car move up and down pretty freely, right? So kit setup he started, right? So he switched that to now the first test session to do what I did at the Halloween Classic. He put the 0.25s in the roll, so the highest roll center. So that would then, let the car rotate more on entry when you're off throttle, and push more weight out the side of the car versus down through that spring and through that tire, right? And then he ran the 0.5 pivots in the flex, right? Which starts to limit some of it adds a little bit of anti-squat, starts to limit some of this movement, right? And that's what I ran at the Halloween Classic, and it was super fast there. But his car, he sort of explained it, and I watched him do the run. His car really got into the corner well. Like it turned in harder than what he was experienced the week before, right? Because the settings were, again, pushing that weight out the side of the car. So off throttle on entry, his car was better. But he said that he felt like he lost, like the car got lazy in that mid corner on throttle. He couldn't get back to the power as quickly, so he felt like his car was lazy. And his lap times were slower. So he went slower than the week before with this first configuration. So the second test that Tim did is put the roll pivots at 1.0. So the lowest roll center possible, right? So he wanted to really let the car dump over on its side, and let's just see what it does. If we go from the highest roll center to the lowest, let's get a really big difference so we can feel it in the car. So really allowing that to roll over, push that weight through that spring, push the weight to that outside wheel, which in theory should have been, the car should not turn as well. And at entry, it certainly didn't, right? But what happened is that mid-corner to exit became super, super rocket fast, right? So Tim thought the car felt better mid-corner to exit, but it wasn't as fast as the week before, right? He didn't hit the same time. He had the 0.5 pivots in the sides, which was also kind of limiting the movement, right? And it also would start to lift the inside front a little bit on entry. So he lost a bit there, but he gained quite a bit to exit, right? So test 3, Tim did 1.0s in the roll, which is the lowest roll center, and he did 0.25s in the flex, which is the lowest anti-squat. So he really was going to test, let's let the car put all the weight in the rear and see what happens, right? And the car was a little bit lazy on turning in. So you could really see it dump over, and you could see the front wheel just lift up, right? So it was a pretty aggressive setting from a standpoint of letting all that weight off throttle going into the corner just dump over to this outside edge. And the front of his car almost looked like it stayed flat except for lifting that front wheel. Like it wasn't dipping this front end at all. So corner entry wasn't as good as the other setting, but corner exit was fantastic. And his lap time was quicker, right? So Tim chose to stick with that setting, and he chose to drive around the entry condition because he liked how aggressive the car was with that forward bite coming off the corner. So he stuck with the 1.0s and the 0.25s for the rest of the day because he felt like that was so quick. He didn't want to go backwards on that setting and give any of that up. So what he was going to do to manage the entry was lift a little earlier, maybe touch a little brakes going into the 180 where the car wasn't as good, right? But his lap times were better. He was faster than the week before. And again, found speed, but in a different way in the corner. All right, so let's talk about my testing. I ran the Halloween Classic setup. So 0.25, highest roll center in the pivots. 0.5 in the flex, the second lowest anti-squat. And the setup just wasn't as quick at Black Swamp. So it really, if I had to describe it, watching my car versus Tim's, my car would just get down to the apex super, super quick. Like I could beat Tim into a corner, but when I started to pull the throttle, anywhere I pulled the throttle in this mid-corner section, my car would just sort of wash out. The front would just sort of clam out like this. So my corner wasn't a nice smooth arc. It was sort of it would get in here and it would just sort of arc out, and then I just couldn't carry the power out, right? So I was losing time here, but I was gaining time here. So it was time to test and see if we could improve this. I just could not get back to throttle in the back of the corner. So we were looking to improve that. So I did what Tim did. I did the 1.0 pivots here. I left my 0.5 pivots in the side. So I was limiting anti-squat a little bit, but I was letting the car roll as much as it wanted, right? Corner entry was not as good. So my car really dumped over. It really lifted the front wheel. I'm running a little bit softer front spring, so my car would at least squat a little bit on the front too. And it really lifted that inside front. And it did it in more corners than Tim's was. Tim's was just in a couple of the tight corners. Mine was in 3 or 4 corners. You could see the front end just lifting up. So it's really allowing that weight to dump over on entry. But on exit, the car got really fast, right? So it completely solved the problem of that washing out of the front end late in the corner. I could use that forward bite to pull the throttle and get out of the corner, right? I was a little worried though about how much my car was dumping over the outside, right? So I went from the black springs up front to whites like Tim had, and I just didn't like corner entry. I felt like I was losing a little bit of speed there. My car could be faster if I could get it a little bit more balanced through the corner and not have to fight it getting into the corner, right? So my next test was I did 0.75 pivots in the roll pivots, which is the second lowest roll center, and I did 0.5 pivots in the flex, which is the second lowest anti-squat. So I was limiting a little bit of the anti-squat, just trying to get a different balance. So my mid-corner through exit stayed strong with the 0.75s. I was really happy with it. I don't feel like there was a lot of difference between the 0.75 and the 1.0 from the mid-corner to exit. But on entry, my car was much, much better behaved. So it stayed a little flatter. It felt a little smoother. So through the corner, I liked the balance. So I stuck with that the rest of the day. I really liked the balance of the car, how it was still pretty aggressive at turn in, but it would set really well in the corner, and then you just monster powered out of the corner. And I think we all went faster, right? So Tim, myself, and then Aaron Merman was doing his own testing as well. So I qualified second. Tim missed TQ by... I missed TQ by less than a tenth from Aaron. Tim was only a couple seconds behind us, so all 3 of us were super, super fast. And I was able to pull out a second place finish in the main. Tim outdrove all of us and put down a stellar run and beat us. So congrats, Tim, on pulling off the win. But the real interesting part about it is that Tim, Aaron, and I all had slightly different setups on our cars. But we were also very close together in lap time on the track. So really the point is you want to get a car that's set up for you, that matches your driving style and your abilities and how you like a car to feel through the corner. If you want to be consistently fast, you've got to be comfortable with the car. So, test and learn. You've got to try things. Find out what works for you. Thanks for listening. I hope that you found this video helpful. In the description of what we think is happening mechanically for what we're feeling on the track. And I look forward to, chatting online and answering questions. And it'd be great to hear from others what you guys have tested and what you're learning from it. So I appreciate the time. Thanks again. Take care.